The Honor 90 was my smartphone of the year for 2023. We're now in 2024 and immediately Honor has kicked things off with something very, very interesting. This is the Honor Magic6 Lite. It costs £349.99 in the UK. That puts it squarely in the Android, well, let's be honest, the budget category. But that's a bit unfair. It has some interesting upgrades over the Magic 5 Lite. The display is slightly larger, the chip is faster, it has more memory and more storage, and the camera is better with 4K video and a larger main sensor. It also has whole device drop resistance, which I keep testing. But it isn't those upgrades over the Magic 5 Lite that I'm interested in. I just want to know if the Magic 6 Lite can do the same thing to me as the Honor 90 did in 2023. So I'll go and get it from over there and let's find out. As always, let's start with the specs and the pricing. The Magic 6 Lite comes in emerald green, midnight black, and sunrise orange, which is this one here, and this is vegan leather. It's got a 6.78-inch 1.5K AMOLED curved display with P3 color, 1200 nits of peak brightness, and a 120Hz variable refresh rate. And that display also has this SGS 5-star overall drop resistance, which, again, I'll show you how that works later on. The Magic 6 Lite is powered by the Snapdragon 6 Gen 1 with 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. In terms of the camera system, we have a 108MP main camera, a 5MP ultra-wide camera, and a 2MP macro camera. And the front-facing camera is 16MP. There's a 5300mAh battery in here with 35W supercharging, IP53 water and dust resistance, and it runs Magic OS 7.2, which is based on Android 13. As mentioned earlier, this is £349.99 in the UK, and it goes on sale on January the 10th. They're also doing a launch offer where you get a Pad X8 completely free of charge when you order your Magic 6 Lite while stocks last. But what you want to know is, what's it like to use, what's the camera like, and mainly, I guess, who is it for? Let's talk about this design, and I'm a massive fan of Honor phones. The Honor 90 is a very striking, beautiful piece of kit, and I think the same goes for the Honor Magic 6 Lite. Now, I know this is completely subjective and everyone has their own opinion on smartphone design, but you can't deny that this looks really, really interesting. This is the vegan leather orange version, as mentioned earlier, and I think it looks particularly nice for the money. I do like the shiny side and the brushed metal on the bottom and the top. It feels so much more expensive than it is. We need more of this stuff these days. Smartphones are just, well, they're a bit boring. Now, I know that doesn't impact the user experience at all, but it does impact the ownership experience, and I think these days that matters. But let's talk about that display, which is an absolute masterpiece. Again, Honor keeps doing this. They did it with the Honor 90. I don't know how they get these displays into such lower priced phones, but they do. Now, I'm not normally the person to moan about the presence of 60Hz smartphone displays on the market these days, but when you start to use phones like the Magic 6 Lite, it becomes clear that every smartphone should have a 120Hz variable refresh rate these days, because if they can do it at this price point, come on, Tim. But it's not just that 120Hz refresh rate that is so impressive about this. It's really, really bright, it's sharp, and because it doesn't have very big bezels, which I'll come on to in a second, it leaps off the screen. I mean, the display leaps off the phone, you know what I mean. But onto those bezels, and the reason they are so small is because it is a curved display. Now, I know this isn't to everyone's taste, but I like it. I like the fact you don't catch your finger on the sides too much. It just makes the Magic 6 Lite display an absolute joy to use, whether you're watching Netflix, if you're catching up with your favorite YouTuber, if you're scrolling through your social media feed. It also features 1920Hz PW dimming, which is designed to help eye strain for anyone who uses their smartphones for long periods of time. So if you do a lot of gaming, or you do a lot of doom scrolling on Twitter/X, whatever it's called, it should help in terms of eye strain. They've also brought across the dynamic dimming and circadian night display technology, which automatically adjusts the screen temperature based on the time of day, again designed to avoid too much eye strain. And for those of you who are glued to your smartphones, not judging you, but if you are constantly looking at that screen, Honor is thinking about you. As for that drop resistance, it does appear to work. I'm not a fan of dropping smartphones, even if they're not mine. Well, obviously if they're not mine. Even if they are review units where we're told in the review guide to test them by dropping them. I don't even want to do it now, but I've dropped this loads of times on the floor on very hard surfaces and there's not a mark on it. The only thing that has a mark on it is the pre-applied, the factory applied screen protector, which you can just about see is slightly damaged on the corners, but that's its job. So if you are the sort of person who is if you're the sort of person who drops their phone a lot, this is the one to get. So we're off to a very good start. Okay, on to performance, and the Snapdragon 6 Gen 1 obviously isn't the latest Snapdragon chip on the market, but it is, well, it's newer than the Snapdragon 695 that was in the Magic 5 Lite, and again, somehow, well, Honor has made it work brilliantly. Now, a quick caveat, I don't do any kind of gaming, I don't do anything intensive with my smartphones these days. I still don't really know how you do that, to be completely honest, but when it comes to regular stuff, social media, communication, zipping around the operating system, this feels very fast. They just seem to be very adept at squeezing the most performance out of older chips, and if you're the sort of person who doesn't spec peep, you're not that bothered about the list of things that you get on the spec sheets for smartphones, and you don't know what the Snapdragon 8 Gen whatever is, this doesn't matter. All that matters is that it feels nice and smooth and that you don't feel like you're being hampered based on how much you've spent. Those days are thankfully nearly behind us, and Honor completely leads the field with this. The other thing that benefits this phone big time is Magic OS. And Magic OS is basically Android 13, but it's a very considerate reimagining of it. There are some subtle differences. The icons look different. The menu system is a little bit different in the settings app, although that's a very common thing with third-party Android customizations. And there's no app drawer, which at first, that's the thing that you pull up from the bottom of the screen to get to your apps. That is a little bit misleading at first, but then you get used to it very quickly, and you can very quickly find the apps you need. Trust me, when it comes to the performance of this phone, you do not feel shortchanged. Okay, time to talk about the camera system on this phone, which is housed in this very, again, unique, interesting casing. And I think the 108 megapixel main camera takes some fantastic images. And again, another caveat, this is a very subjective part of smartphone reviews. What I like, you may not like, and vice versa, but I don't think you can argue the fact that the Honor Magic 6 Lite produces some very nice images. They're not too processed, they're detailed, there's some very nice dynamic range. They just get the job done very well. Remember, this is a budget phone, so it's not going to perform as well as the more expensive Honor phones or the other flagships, but I think it does very well, again, for the money. As is always the case at this end of the smartphone market, I did get a few instances where images weren't quite as sharp as I wanted them to be, but that was only with very fast moving objects, and as we know, there are some flagship smartphones that have the exact same problem. Samsung. But in the right conditions and with the right lighting and just the right moment, the Magic 6 Lite does excel, and that's what matters. It's also nice to have that wide angle, which works well in a variety of conditions, and the macro mode, which again produces some very nice results. It has a night mode as well, and I think these night mode examples look really good. I think the video is very good as well. I did accidentally shoot this one in 1080p, but look, it's puppies. But here's some 4K footage shot in the studio, which again I think is very good for the money. It's nice and clear, nice and detailed. The dynamic range is impressive. Again, for the price, this is very good stuff. And this is the front-facing camera in very challenging lighting conditions, as you can see here. I've done nothing with this image, nothing with the audio. This only shoots in 1080p. It's worth bearing that in mind. But as I make my way around the studio, doesn't look too bad, really. It's very there's a lot of dynamic range going on in here in terms of very dark areas and very bright areas, and this isn't bad, is it? So in terms of the camera system, again, for the price, I know I'm sounding like a broken record with this, but for the price, the Honor Magic 6 Lite is very, very good. Conclusion time. Who is the Magic 6 Lite for? If you're not bothered about the iPhone, if you're not bothered at all about iOS and the Apple ecosystem, but you do like Android and you don't have a very big budget, but you don't want to feel shortchanged or as though your budget means you should have a rubbish smartphone, just get this. Honor has done it again. They've packed a fantastic design, an amazing display, a very capable camera system, a brilliant OS. I completely forgot to mention the battery as well, which is just as fantastic as those other things. 2 days is no problem whatsoever. All of that stuff into a phone that costs £349.99. I've spent a lot of money on tech over the last 3.5 years. It's nice to have a phone which doesn't demand as much money, yet still gives you loads of stuff in return. So, top marks, Honor, you've done it again. And if you missed my smartphone of the year for 2023 video, keep watching.